Thanks, Rafael. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me okay. So I'll probably have a go at first answering that question. So look, I think the cloud and AI definitely is the future for our business, right? So if you look at not just the business at home, that we use some sort of machine learning and AI tools such as free Google HomePod and whatnot, right? So what happens in my view, the AI and ML will continue to evolve, and it'll automate and augment human decision making. Where the repetitive task will take over by these the tools. However, at the same time, from the security lens, the attackers are also innovating maybe too faster than us, using this technology to exploit the vulnerabilities and so on. And also the other side, if you look at the cloud, where if you remember 10-15 years ago, to get a VM to run a project, it'll take some time. Some cases, in my experience, it used to take a couple of months at least, with different service providers and so on. And the cloud comes in, and it's just a matter of a couple of clicks that you have a VM to work on. So definitely the new technology helping business to more agile and evolve faster. At the same time, being a security professional, I'm also cautious around these technology helping the attackers to exploit faster. Where one point that we also need to defend ourselves using such a tool.
So Andrew, do you want to contribute into? I think you were about to say something, and then I think you got interrupted.
So absolutely, I completely agree with Daminda there. There were some really good points. Absolutely, take advantage of what is offered and given, because the attackers are definitely taking advantage of these resources. But use caution and make sure that you're doing it in the right way. It is a journey, right? They say innovate or die, and that's the same for attackers as well as defenders. Artificial intelligence helps augment, enhance, accelerate, and automate. So essentially, it helps save time, do something completely for me, or makes life easier. AI is kind of similar to RPA, robotic process automation back in 2018, 2019. You can reduce staffing costs, complaints, and errors. And I think more CIOs are turning towards robotic process automation to eliminate those tedious tasks, freeing up workers to focus on higher value work. But RPA, like AI, requires proper design, planning, and governance. So, take everything with a grain of salt. It's definitely not a silver bullet. So AI, I don't think, is going to replace everything that in your security program. So you won't be able to go to the board tomorrow and cross everything off on the list with one AI item.
Neil, what about on your side?
Yeah, I mean, part of the question is cloud a benefit to business? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. I think the entire industry has shown that that's correct, in that it allows organizations to move more quickly and scale more quickly than they could have before. And when I say move more quickly, when you think about traditional IT investments where you're buying infrastructure, you're using capital expenditure to do that, and that kind of commits you to the life cycle of that infrastructure. And then, changing, like increasing, is more capex. Decreasing is kind of not possible because nobody really wants to write assets off. So I think the agility that you get when you're spending OPEX on cloud, and the fact that you can focus on what's important to you, which is typically the services, the applications that are running on top of the infrastructure. So you're not having to, deal with the kind of watering and feeding of the infrastructure, is great. That agility also means it can get out of control quite quickly, and I think we've seen that in the kind of birth of the cloud era, as frustrated developers have used their credit cards to sign up for cloud services in order to just get moving. And that can be challenging from a security perspective, just to know who's doing what before you even get to thinking about how to protect it. But I think the cloud providers have made some good strides, and organisations have made some good strides as well in being better prepared to deal with that. Having said that, cloud service providers will tell you in their contracts that there's a shared security model, and I'm not sure all organisations really appreciate that. Just because you're using software as a service or infrastructure as a service doesn't mean you no longer have to think about the security of that infrastructure or software. So I think that's something organizations need to keep in mind, that they are conscious of their part of that kind of bargain. And then from an AI perspective, and AI is a pretty grand term, I think we're really talking about the subset of that, which is things like machine learning. I think you can use that to automate some of the more repetitive tasks. From a security perspective, one of the biggest challenges is alert fatigue. And if you can use machine intelligence to reduce alert fatigue, so to increase the quality and veracity of alerts, then you need less people to deal with it, and they're more likely to be focused on and responsive to the alert that they get and able to act in a timely manner. So it definitely has a future in security.
And Doctor, actually,
Yes. Yes,
on your side, what is your considerations for this first question?
I think definitely I would agree to my fellow colleagues here, the panelists. So as the National Specialist Center, whereby Cybersecurity Malaysia is the CERT for Malaysia, and by embracing, because the government has coined out the idea of digital transformation, so digital economy and whatnot. So from there onwards, we have developed the fourth IR kind of thing. We have a policy which include AI, security, cloud first and whatnot. We have to embrace all those technologies. Having said that, I would like to attract the audience of the conference today that again all this stuff is very important. It's back to basic, where we look into people, process, and technology, and this technology would help us in being proactive, being rapid in doing our business, be it security or other domain of work. And at the same time, I would like to engage with the audience that you have to understand the risk of the technology. Of course, AI is the de facto solution, as mentioned by Andrew just now. It is not a solution for everything, so you have to understand the risk. You have to be creatively developing the use case, design, and everything in respect to your requirement or objective. Again, there will be a cost to it, and at the end of the day, apart from the risk, so some of the factor or component for you to consider, for example, like cost versus security. So how much financial strength that you have for you to be able to push some of the components or some of the analysis to the cloud, and at the same time using AI for you to have some kind of a very good solution there. So my last input here, as to the first question by Raphael, by the chairperson today, that of course cloud and AI is very important in your business.
Okay, now I think I collect some kind of information as we present the first question, and I think linked to the second question, I heard you guys saying about investing or dying. So, and I'm gonna come back on that. Also, COPEX versus OPEX on that situation, and also I think putting in the kind of on the top of that, and before and after the pandemic, because there's kind of I think before. Company wasn't kind of really prepared to invest in that way, or in kind of open the budget as they are opening now for embracing new emerging technologies. or even cloud, I don't consider to be emergent, or AI. But I think it depends on the concept of the company. I think from the COVID-19 that we are living now, this has kind of embraced us to move pretty much in 10 years, in a year time. And I think things that we are saying about that, what is efficiencies? Because, you present AI, talk about technical terms, it's very hard to overcome sometimes barriers. But how can we bring efficiencies to help maybe the business to match or to find better mitigation, or to be faster in the mitigation process, or even protect against threats, or even more, as you mentioned, I think investing now or dying later to do with the effect of innovation. Who wants to start first?
I'm happy to go first again. So, Luca, let me answer that on two parts. So you ask around how AI can be used for efficiency. At the same time, I also wanted to call out what the risk we touched upon earlier. So in 2018, there's an AI in cybersecurity study found that zero-day vulnerability, one of the best way to compromise systems. And also on this study, they talk about AI has the ability to detect zero-day by 63%. So that shows you where the attackers or use the AI technology that has more chance of getting compromised or exploit the vulnerabilities of the business or any other organization. Now, on that matter, so how we can be efficient using that AI technology? In my view, so if any organization today, not talking about the SOA or security automation, and that's a problem. So today, because of the evolving the attacks, we definitely need to start thinking about the using the AI technology built into some sort of a security orchestration automation response SOA capabilities, where it detects the incident or attempted attacks, and then obviously react to it. Now, that's how I see that we can actually use some of those AI capabilities for our benefit, and then improve our efficiency. Now, the challenge what we face today as a security professional, in my experience, security team loves these the AI-driven security tools, but you need to work collaboratively with the rest of the team, right? Infrastructure team, network team, and application teams, and so on, and the business. Now, what do you find, and bringing the rest of the team across to support that, it is challenging today. We got a lot more work need to be done, and a lot of organizations start thinking about it. But especially if an organization is transacting over 50 years, where you deal with the legacy application, legacy infrastructure, and these tools are really good. At the same time, it exposes the challenges where it disrupts the business, and that's my view.
Andrea, so let's follow the same logic, or someone wants to jump in.
Hi, Mr. Narezi, before you move ahead, just one bit. We have Wayne online with us, but as per protocol, he's not going to be on camera. So I would request you to please direct your questions to him. He will be participating, but only in audio format.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see his camera. That's why I wasn't announcing him.
Yes. Just wanted to inform you about it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. So do you want to go with Emin then, just to start to bring him more to the topic? I'm sorry, I think we didn't I didn't see on the camera yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So, what we're looking at when we talk about AI is we talk about networks, neural networks, right? And the biggest issue is people don't understand their own abilities. They don't understand their mind. So if they don't understand their own mind and how they work, how are they going to build artificial intelligence? And this is the reality. We've got a people's problem. And the people's problem is we've got to get people to understand the technology. And the reality is they don't understand neural networks the way the big vendors are already using it. Amazon, there are all of these huge players. Everyone's using AI. Of course, the cyber security community, we started to use AI because we realized the attackers are using AI to get into our systems. So a human, response to some of these attack vectors is not sufficient. And so therefore, we realize machine learning is AI. We still need the humans to build the AI, to build the algorithms, and therefore we're still in control of it. So AI does not have the heart and soul of a man. We've got to remember that. So people should not be afraid of leveraging their abilities to actually build upon this. You obviously tell, I'm a big follower of Elon Musk, right? But we can see what he's already done. It's clear, the results. You've got an implant to help people with diseases at first, not to make them superheroes, but to help them with medical conditions first. I'm going to pass the ball.
No, that's a very good point about the innovation perspective as well, and how this can innovate the whole world. Thank you, Ring. So I think going back now to Andrew, to Danish, right? Oh, Andrew, sorry, Andrew, it's changed.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
So, this was some great points, especially from Wayne, on getting people to understand the technology, right? Once you understand the technology, you can probably leverage it to get the best use. I still think AI is not the silver bullet yet, but it's great for a lot of things. There's a lot of good use cases for it. It definitely can be an accelerator. It definitely can help the business as a tool if used in the right way. It's kind of like going for a walk or catching a plane. AI will probably find the fastest route, but sometimes you might still end up in the wrong location. I think taking probably 2 steps back, there's about 7 types of AI that people normally talk about. Just for the panel and time's sake, there's probably 4 that I'll summarize to talk about here. So you have reactive AI, limited memory, theory of mind, and self-awareness. I think a couple of points were talked about from Wayne. So reactive AI is really good for simple classification and pattern recognition of tasks. So a good example is like chess. I think everyone remembers Big Blue beating Mr. Kasparov in chess. However, reactive AI is, incapable of dealing with complex scenarios, including imperfect information, requiring historical understanding as well. You've got limited AI that can handle more complex classification of tasks, and it's able to use historical data to make the predictions. That's extremely important when you apply it to cybersecurity or and AI. It's kind of like self-driving cars. So you can do that kind of stuff, but it's still vulnerable to outliers and adversarial examples, right? And that's probably where we've been stuck on at the moment. Then you move on to theory of mind. And that's where you're able to understand human motives and reasoning, and it can deliver that personal experience, right, based on their motive and needs. And it needs fewer examples to be really, really clever. And I think that's the next milestone of AI. And then you have awareness. And this is where it has human intelligence and above. And that can possibly, or probably bypass our own. So, where you have AI and computers as slaves, potentially we might even become their slaves if you believe in people like Stephen Hawking. But in today's point in time, like say for little things like backburning data as part of your security practice, automatic deletion of data of what you don't need, it'll be a hard decision for a lot of CISOs to make, to run automatic deletion, automatic backburning, automatic protection that may potentially block legitimate traffic or users. But I think AI can quickly gather insights on millions of external sources and remember it as well, probably better than humans can, right? I think they don't need breaks and refreshments. So generally they like working 24/7 like free slaves. They do repetitive tasks pretty well and can reduce those errors. I'll probably leave it at that, but it's obviously not magical. Thank you.
You must have reinforced learning, though. That's the only key point. You must have reinforced learning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Reinforced learning, but it depends, on that situation, whether it's exposed to external factors. Sometimes it might even learn the wrong things. But you're right, it could learn even better things or a new language or to do things more efficiently than what we can even imagine how we would do it now.
But then don't make the point about a silver bullet, because we got a lot of the bullets, right? So at least we got to use some of those bullets. There's no silver bullet to any cybersecurity, but we got to learn to actually adapt and improvise. So right now we've got this big pandemic, right? We realize the sheer amount of attack vectors taking place right now. If we didn't have host intrusion detection with AI in our software we're already using for cybersecurity, we wouldn't detect half of the attacks that's already happening. So we're using it. That's the key point, right?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, Ring, on that sense.
Yeah, and I'll dive in because I think I'm next in there. If we're sticking to the first order, and when I agree, I think when you move away from the term AI as the big kind of general intelligence thought and into machine learning, we're using it today, and in fact, at Rapid7 we've been using a form of that was developed in the 70s called REIT, which is really basically a way of sorting through, comparing one big data set to another big data set without having to do a kind of dictionary style one-on-one comparison, so using decision trees. So, AI, or in the form of machine learning, has been around for many decades. And, similarly to the point Wayne made, we also use machine learning in our IDR products and our SIEM product in order to detect behaviors. And, also, one of the ways we're using it is to try to pare down the number of false positives that our analysts have to deal with, so that, again, going back to the point I made previously, they can avoid alert fatigue. Happily for the organization, that means you can reduce your cost, because you need anywhere as little as half of the man hours that you would have needed to sort through alerts if you can apply some decent machine learning. On the other issue you mentioned, Wayne, which was the post, the basically training, after the fact training, and of course the particular term you used has escaped me. But I've found that in that situation you do run the risk, unless you have data scientists doing that, you run the risk of training the machine learning algorithms into obscurity, because you say, yeah, that was great, when in fact it wasn't. So it learns like a good little machine. Okay, next time I see that, I'm going to alert on that far more. And I find you can train it into obscurity. So I think you need people who know how to operate the systems and run the training, who are involved throughout. So personally, I'm not convinced this is kind of user land ready. I think it's more the domain of technology vendors who can allocate the data scientists to make sure that they're kind of maximizing the value of the machine learning, rather than potentially training it into obscurity or not training it at all. And I've seen this before in the area of security analytics, where you just end up with so many false positives that your analysts spend a huge amount of time trying to work out what's real and what's not real.
So, yep.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think, of course, I agree that with AI, by hook or by crook, we have to adopt it, and of course, it increases the efficiencies. So, having said that, based on the deployment of threat intelligence platform, endpoint detection sensors and whatnot, so that be part of the telemetry and also part of the security orchestration, automation, and also response. And I think I would like to bring the audience to the data side. Of course, I would agree that data is expensive, very important. Data is, in fact, the new oil. So the challenge is, apart from going to the AI model, developing or extracting the feature of the particular data, what kind of information that you wanted to extract, as to complete your AI based on machine learning, be it supervised for classification, be it unsupervised for clustering. For example, like back in Malaysia, how do we cluster the infection based on the states in Malaysia, so that a rapid and proactive response can be conducted. So I would like to bring the audience and also the panelists to the data. Of course, data is very important. Without data, there's no AI. Apart from the internal or internal data based on the sensors or some of the deployment at the strategic vicinity, we also get feeds based on external data, and from there onwards, we will be able to get some kind of information. And I would agree with Neil just now that by using it, you have to creatively understand the AI by itself, the algorithm and whatnot, based on the data scientists, based on the ability to develop the big data system. So all these things you have to consider for the key takeaway for the audience takeaway based on this discussion. And I would like to emphasize on the data. Without the data, it is difficult, and with the data it can create a false positive. And again, you have to creatively deploy your project apart from the SOA deployment, and most probably based on the feeds or based on the data that given to you. For example, like cybersecurity Malaysia as the national cert, you can do something with respect to the AI. Then I would share with the audience today that it gives some kind of efficiency based on that particular situation. Thank you.
So, Rafael, can I also make one?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Comment. So while we're talking about the technology, it is also important come down to understand what business problem we're trying to solve, right? So as you know, in the technology stack, we can acquire any number of tools. We can spend money, a lot of money on those tools. So it is really important for us to understand what's our business problem, what's our business risk, or our risk. It could be a business, it could be, if you look at what I'm hearing about from Dr. Ashwami around the cert challenges, etc. All those, it's come down to what problem we are trying to solve, right? So based on, we start from what we're trying to solve and come back, then we can think about because tool comes at the last, right? So again, I'm also going back to the fact that Dr. Ashwami also touched upon importance of people process tool.
Yes.
So we understand what problem we are trying to solve, and using people process tool, and then we can think about all this newer technology, AI, machine learning, whatnot, right? So to me, that's how we should trickle through.
Yep. Exactly.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, I think the points that everyone has put forward it definitely will impact the company with efficiencies. And I think how do we see, for example, for what you discussed about positive and negative, reverting back to the security team, right? Because I think they are very busy at the moment, even more now with all this kind of a pandemic crisis happening. I don't like to say all the time about the pandemic, but actually increase the complexity of every single business, since everyone is working from home. So instead to be, for example, one office and 200 people inside, you have 200 people outside and 200 office versus one office. So this increases the complexity where we live. And AI, it should help us to kind of, as you guys just mentioned, to deal at least with a better chance to focus on the positive rather than too much false positive message there, because that's what I think that where you get efficiency on the team, and you don't have to continue hiring more professionals to keep the security in place. So how do we see this in place with the efficiencies being generated? Because at the end of the day, we need to show the results we need to keep everything safe, but at the same time show the results that AI can help the business in their circumstances.
And Raphael, just to dive in, I just wanted to expand on a point Daminda made, because I think it's really relevant, which is understand the problem you're trying to solve before you start throwing machine intelligence at it or machine learning. And I think, and I'm sorry if this will sound a bit controversial, but many times when people think they want security analytics, so using machine learning to run across huge data sets of security events in order to detect anomalous behavior, what they're asking for really is at the very peak of your, a security program. If you're looking for the statistically anomalous yet security-related events in your environment, then you'd better be doing it because you're great at patch management, you've done your whitelisting, you've got your network segmentation in place, because there's so much easier things to do and so much more fundamentally beneficial to your security program. So when you get to using machine learning, this is as a customer, if you're saying, I'm actually interested in getting some of this advanced analytics, I would hope that you're doing that because you're nailing the rest of your security program and you're looking for that last 5%.
Correct.
Very valid point. Anyone wants to jump into the topic?
So the other thing, also I'm pretty sure you all deal with the business decision makers such as CEOs and CFOs. And I would ask the question from everyone: how many CEOs and CFOs are really educated on this AI and ML space? I'm not talking about the technology companies and the companies like the manufacturing companies, the retail companies, and not really the digital driven companies. I've just asked the question: how many CEOs really understand? They know that this thing exists. How much they are really aware of what it can do, right? And also, the previous conversation, I was listening to half of it, and it talks about the previous panel. Also, I also believe that what's the framework or is there an AI strategy that we should be driving in the organization? Because at the end of the day, these things can go, like I mentioned earlier, we can spend a lot of money. We may not give that business benefit back, Rafael. You mentioned that as well, right? So, well, but what do we actually give back to the business? To me, that should really have some sort of framework and the strategy. So we understand the business problem with a consistent framework and a strategy, so we can actually deliver the outcome to the business and show the return on investment. So that's really, and also the education piece. As we, so technology professionals, that we should consistently educate the business around those benefits they're going to get using the newer technologies. And that's really key, because on my career, 10 years ago, yes, everyone knew about cybersecurity. Did they really put their head into it? Like you said, the pandemic has changed, the checkbooks are open, everyone starts spending money. But I remember we were just harping about cybersecurity, and only last 4 years I saw the CEO really start really understanding. Maybe there's a selfishness such as the law, the legal liability, and etc. Right? So to me, that education piece also really key to take the business through this journey.
It's a very interesting point, and I think just for add more into this conversation, I think accountability is part of the discussion here, because and then if the CEO doesn't act or doesn't open the checkbooks to invest to protect the organization, therefore we cannot blame the technology or even the professionals that are trying to fight against what's happening out there. So I think it's a kind of accountability has changed. For example, in Europe, we see the GDPR, so people are more concerned about privacy. In US, it's completely different picture, because US maybe doesn't care too much about privacy, but they are more considering on the critical infrastructure. But before we go into this kind of a scenario in a global perspective, that's what I think is changing, accountability at the top level, because we don't want to be only a tick box. So we have a CISO, yes, okay, sure, fine. And then if something happens, we fire the CISO, right? doesn't matter what technology or people that you have behind, but I think that's what I think the business I start to learn about cybersecurity. And I think before we continue, it's very valid point to say is exactly what you're saying. Educational, right? Bringing everyone together. That cybersecurity is a matter of is a teamwork. It is not just because you have a security team there, you are protected. Not at all. I think you need tools, you need people, and also most of the fundamental part. There is no silver bullet at all in the cybersecurity aspect. So that's a very valid point. So that's why I think in this kind of a new generation that we live, we have to educate people to make sure they understand what is the digital transformation is about and what is the consequences of not applying the security in the metric that you need to keep your business running. By the way, we live a digital economy so far. So you have to invest on that to keep your business function. So there is no other choice, I would say.
And Raphael, you touched on, I think, an area of accountability there, because you're right. If the executive team doesn't invest the money in cybersecurity, that's you would say, well, that's the executive team not fulfilling all of its responsibilities, but they can only make decisions based on the information they have at hand. And so I think we as a cybersecurity industry have to hold ourselves accountable for making sure that we're communicating in the language of risk to the executive team so that they can make decisions. Because ultimately, you could communicate that, we're launching this new application. There is this, here are the controls that we've put in place. There's a residual risk that looks like this. And here's what would happen if that risk is realized, here's the likelihood, and then the executive team needs to make a decision. Do we want to spend some more money to cover that risk, or do we want to run with that risk? And I think, I don't believe we as an industry are consistently doing a great job of providing the right information and context in the right language to the executives for them to make informed decisions. And I'm not trying to make excuses for executives who don't want to hear those, that information. I'm just saying we have to remain conscious of our obligation in this.
I think I would like to respond to the panelists, inputs here. As a national specialist agency, we are being entrusted to look into, what is the incidents, what is the technology loopholes, and whatnot. And at the same time, I would like to share. I think the same goes in each country. We have strategies. And then recently, we have launched a nation cybersecurity strategy. And we have altogether 5 trusts, and one of the trusts, which is trust, 4, to create awareness. And then, of course, this pandemic, COVID-19, has its negative, impacts all over the world. But at the same time, I think it assists us in creating more awareness by working from home, by getting more incidences. As a third, the statistic search, for this year as compared to the previous years, and it is our obligation as the CERT, as the national CERT, to provide awareness. And then we have gone to the level of senior management, and at the same time to get the buy-in from the board of directors, because as I understood, because we have friends from the IT department, it is very difficult for them to justify to purchase or to get sensors within their IT system and whatnot. So this is the responsibility at the national level, and I believe that by using the strategy or the policy at the national level, we can create more awareness so that we can get the buy-in from the top management.
Okay, so I think before we go into Q&A, I have one kind of last question here, as I said. So how can each one of you could illustrate a real time or a real case scenario or implementation of a proactive and rapid incident response system to deal with the complex system that we live today? I mean, you don't need to name providers here, but just kind of solutions in terms of what you've been kind of modeling against across, sorry.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
If it's being allowed. So back to the topic of discussion that leveraging cloud and an AI to to push proactiveness and also rapid response. Yes, of course, as part of the strategy, as part of the at the policy level to transform digitally. Of course, it is not deniable that cloud is a must because again you have to understand the risk, you have to do the cost benefit analysis, and as mentioned by Daminda just now, you have to understand the use case. You yourself would understand what is your problem. For example, like as a Malaysian state, we do understand at national level we have to pick up a lot of information at a sectoral level based on the critical national information infrastructure. So what kind of information needs to be uploaded at the highest level, so that top to bottom, bottom to top sharing, so that the country it understands the cyber threat landscape at national level. So I would like to share with the panelists and also audience that apart from SOA deployment based on commercial purchase, at the same time we have gone into our own R&D, which is part of the Malaysian cybersecurity strategy to involve deeply in R&D. So we have leveraged cloud a lot. We have leveraged AI, and just to respect the time here, the use case, you have to understand your problem based on the risk, based on your situation and condition, and from there onwards you'll be able to develop your own solution based on cloud, based on AI, so that be a good solution for yourself, for your organization, because each organization, each person, they have their own situation, and at the end of the day you have to creatively develop your use case. Thank you.
Yeah, just before you continue, I would like to open for questions, but we continue the debate so the questions can come and then we can start to get the questions. So if the audience has some questions, please start to submit them, and then we go back on that. And Wayne, just show up a little bit because I cannot see you, but please, I mean that.
Can I? So I'll share with you. So what as Wayne mentioned earlier, that currently we do use AI and ML on our the tools, right? So what we did, like example, we run intrusion prevent systems with those capabilities. Our vulnerability management tools are with those capabilities. Now with the new, what I also found, our partners also start collaborating. So if you remember 10 years ago, if you put security stack, let's say McAfee or Symantec, that you stick with the same product, right? So there's not much integration going on. With a newer tool, that actually they open up for collaboration, which is, I think that's really valuable. What we did, we actually using the great tool with the mechanism, we actually integrate through the integrate each other's and through API or etc. And then we develop the ecosystems. So as an example, when there's a malicious email come through and our mail filtering solution picked up using that, or it released and it actually notify our other systems, such as our vulnerability management, saying, hey, we saw this malicious, can you go and scan all your environment, and this is the malware that we saw. And then at the same time, it goes and block the firewalls for that the source IP address of the attacker. And what I'm trying, we developed that ecosystem using the different technology. To me, that our partners, the technology partners, are really start collaborating with each other, and that allows us to create that ecosystem. An organization like us, we're not a technology company. Our business manufacturing gases, developing PPE equipment and marketplace and so on. So what we definitely leverage with our technology partners who really invest on this area. And then what we do, we actually put them together and develop that ecosystem to respond that. And that's what we did.
So Wayne, So you'll be kind of on the audio there, but what do you think about the topics that we are illustrating here? Just your collaboration for 2 cents to us.
I think everybody's got some amazing point of views there. And the reality is, if you've never read any of Max Tegmark's work, he's a MIT physicist and AI researcher. So as he puts it, right, he separates the real opportunities and threats from the myths. So look into some of the guidance he's given, because he's given a lot of concrete steps that we should take to ensure our AI ends up being the best rather than the worst. And so if we as human beings are not able to deal with some of our issues, how are we going to expect AI to do any better than us, right? And that's the reality, where we still in control of training the intelligence. So we've got to make sure we train it with the right intelligence and realize that it's not going to go smoothly initially, because people are going to build too much information. Like we look at Microsoft, how they came out and they put their AI online first. Well, it became, one-sided to the negative side, as an example. So we need to have everything as a balance. And that's the key point. It's up to us to make it the best rather than the worst. It's based upon our control of that.
Okay.
Thanks. Great points from all of you folks. It's been a great pleasure to share opinions with like-minded people.
It's great to be together. So that's what it's about, cybersecurity, a global perspective, and trying to understand difficulties from different regions and try to add value there. So it's a share of knowledge. That's for sure. I think one question that I think I want to ask here is, how do I show the value? And I think we touched base on that, but how do I convince my management or my directors to invest more on AI?
I'll have a go at that. It comes down to cost versus benefit. And again, to Minda's point, what are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to cut down on false positives, for instance, then you will have a hypothesis about how machine learning can help you to do that, and therefore how many man hours that would save you. And you need to look at the cost of implementing the technology versus the cost savings, and there you have the foundations of a business case. Some of the less tangible parts of that business case will be, as something I mentioned earlier, which is with less false positives, you'll get better attention and results from your analysts, because ideally you'll do things like, if something looks like a false positive, your algorithm will present them with, this looks like a false positive and here's why it looks like a false positive, so they can make a very quick decision to confirm that or to keep investigating. And then for those things that aren't false positives, they'll have more time and they'll be more attentive. And it can be quite tricky, as I'm sure we all know, to kind of include soft metrics like that in business cases. But I do think with machine learning, in many cases, you can build a solid cost-based foundation for a business case.
So, Rafael, so Gardner referred to AI as an amazing innovation. Now, to me, how we get the support or buy-in from the executive, as Neil mentioned earlier, the board really knows about the risk. The CFO knows about the numbers. So if you can write the business case, forget about the technology piece, show them the risk that we can mitigate for the business, show them the fatigue or the human that we can actually reduce on doing repetitive tasks, where we can actually either save that cost or redeploy those human into an area where they can actually use the human intelligence to either expand the business or get that market share. I think that's how we need to frame the conversation to that level. So when we frame the conversation to that level, they understand that. to me that every business case I write and the conversation I have, I don't normally talk about the technology stack at all. I completely relate to the business risk and the benefit and the dollar figures that that they either can save or redeploy to expand that capital. And that's how I frame the conversation.
Can I also respond to Raphael's question? I think back to basic the foundation. I mentioned people, process, and technology. Of course, process and technology we can devise it, we can came out. Is part of the component. So people, the skill set is very important. Having said that, one of the key success factor, what I'm trying to say is the collaboration among your peers, at government agencies, private sector, public sectors, and whatnot. And based on the use case of your particular project, because you are the one who understand the risk and whatnot, so try to collaborate with other organization, private and public, and from there onwards, try to come up with a project that is tangible, that is can be appreciated by the CFO, by the minister and whatnot. So I'd like to share that that there's one project that we have conducted back in Malaysia. For example, like based on the deployment of sensors and point and whatnot. So we have a big set of data, extremely big, and from there onwards, we bring it to the cloud, we bring it to the AI environment, and not to be that sophisticated. We have not gone to deep learning, which is part of the plan. So we have gone to the level of clustering, so that we are able to see that which ASN or which IP that is mostly infected. So based on the case study that have conducted by our counterpart in the Europe and the rest, for example, like takedown. So based on a simple AI, start small. Don't go big because of the cost benefit analysis, the budget that you have gotten from your management or your ministry. So based on this small set of project that I want to share with the panelists and the audience, that it has created a lot of awareness, and from there onwards we would be able to do incident response and forensics investigation. So we bring down some of the malicious servers or IP back in Malaysia. So this is one of the scenario that I would like to share with the seminar today.
Wayne, going back to you now, and I think with all of you as well. So what I heard from and I understood from the panel here is the following: appetite to the risk versus time to act. And on top of that, we have to create a business plan. And do we have to create a business plan all the time? So the situation is slightly different at the present time, because maybe we don't have enough time to present something, but we have to adapt into a certain risk without the necessary space to respond to that. So how do we balance things out now? Because we are saying appetite to the risk, yes, we have to measure there to present to follow more with investment case for that. But the time is a constraint, is on our back, and it pressurizes us to act fast. So how do we balance things out?
Yeah, good question. I'll jump in. So the way we approach, we actually only, in the current situation, like you said, it's exhausting, right? As a security professional, it is quite a lot that we have, the stuff we have to deal with. The way we approach this, we look at what's our crown jewel, what's really the most important things for us to protect. We actually put all that effort to protect our crown jewels, and then the others, we actually call out the risk to the management, where they either accept the risk or pull extra team resources to get remediate the risk for those other areas. So, but the immediate action. So when it comes to crown jewels, we actually turn around very quickly. Like, we don't have to write a business case. We will actually take some action. And in that way, I think the current conditions help us security teams to be autonomous and somewhat, not going through all the rigor processes, act fast and do things very quickly. And that's the approach we've taken.
Wayne, let's add you more to this conversation here.
Well, I'm looking at this from a machine learning point of view, right? So when we start looking at what our personal experiences are, that's where we got to realize that the executives don't have enough direct personal experiences with this. So the first thing is make sure you know what you're going to be classifying and you want to predict, right? That's the part where executives are going like, I don't know, technical team, what are we looking to stop right now? We still looking at this from a people's point of view. So we need to look at collecting as much data as you can about the context in which you're making too many assumptions, right? And that's the part where we making an assumption about the AI instead of building it out and letting it show its abilities. So the reality is showing your incident response team as an example that it's going to take you 10 hours to go and do some initial threat hunting to try and, differentiate between, is this a real threat we need to dive deeper into, or is this just a false positive, right? So when you go along and you take those case studies, it's not just a case study, it's actually a technological display of ability. When you show this is without the AI and this is with the AI, the reality is we need the executives to buy in. We need the buy-in from executives, otherwise we're not going to go any further. And so this is how we have to start at the basics, exactly what a lot of you guys have been saying. Go to the basics and say, okay, what are we looking to classify here? We've got to classify, we've got to predict. What are we looking to achieve? The reality is too many people are looking at the silver bullet, exactly as Andrew was saying. They think AI is going to be the silver bullet, but they don't understand it. So in order for it to be the silver bullet, you need to understand it. And in order to understand it, you need to get the executives to buy in. If we don't have the executive level buy-in, we're not going very far with AI.
So I think I have two more questions here before we close this panel. So one is on the cloud, and the other one just to keep up on this topic right now. Has the KPIs has changed? Or in other words, let me put in that other perspective. I want to consider that IT is not cybersecurity, right? So what are the points on that? Because KPIs from the IT might be slightly different from the cybersecurity perspective on the security side. So what's your contribution to that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are we talking about basically the objectives of IT versus the objectives of security, and where they may differ significantly enough to cause conflict? I think
that's exactly right. So that's exactly the point. Yeah. Sorry, in terms of presenting to the business case, they see us as IT in every single aspect, but it's not. Yeah. And that's actually the conflict that sometimes generates, right? Because the IT, they are more based on the availability, let's put them that way, or downtime, right? But not so much on our case that could be compromising the entire infrastructure that is a cybersecurity.
Yeah. I could probably give it a go for this question, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think of companies like Distribute IT, right? They were really good at IT and really good for their customers. But after their breach, they essentially went bankrupt, right? They don't exist anymore. Travelex, right? I think you can see all their little shops around the world, right? 4 months later after their breach, they don't exist anymore. So yeah, IT is definitely for the business, and cybersecurity is also there to help enable that business, right? But I think sometimes if you don't have that cybersecurity metric, you may not even end up with a business at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I actually want to touch upon that Andrew's point. So the way I see cybersecurity risk is not an IT or technology risk. It's a business risk, right? So when I go front of the board, I call out the cybersecurity KPI is a business KPI, because it won't take that long to get business out of action completely. We've seen this. It's not James Bond anymore. Well, this is real stuff, right? And excuse my language, it's shit's happening, right? We've seen on the papers every day. So that to me, when I have that conversation, absolutely, Andrew nailed this very well. It's about the business risk we're talking here.
Yep.
And I would add that that the old school approach of cybersecurity professionals is to find a reason to say no. So the business says, I want to develop this application and do, a great example, internet banking. Let's expose our core banking systems to the internet. And the knee-jerk reaction of the security team is no, that brings up a lot of risk. And it's actually, I think, to Dominda's point and Andrew's point, it's not the job of security to say no. It's the job of the executives to make a decision on the risk as it's presented to them. So the job of the security organization there is to say, yes, and here's how I believe you could do it safely. And then that information is what a decision is made on, not no, because no is unacceptable.
Okay.
So can I respond to that as well?
Yeah.
So mostly one of the strategy is, this is the difficulty of the, let's say, IT manager and whatnot, because of the one set is the on the IT and another set is on the cyber. So what we do is, again, if possible, to fall back to the, to the policy level, so that we have clauses here and there, in order to get their buy-in from their top executive, because they are, policy guy, they are risk calculator in a way, because they are very senior people. So if they can appreciate that, I think based on it could be difficult if you go to them. This is hacking. This is something that happening on the ground, ransomware and whatnot. Mostly it's difficult for them to appreciate unless they are the victim, they themselves. But one of the strategy is to go to the policy level so that they have to abide by it.
Okay, the last question before we finish this fantastic panel. So I'm kind of I'm privileged to be here with you guys. Cloud. I mean, I probably, I will stick my point that cloud is better, but some people will say depends. So on your point, is cloud better or worse for the security teams? And let me add something, the cherry in the cake here. What about visibility in the cloud?
So, yeah, I'll probably start at cloud. I agree. I'm in your side, Rafael. You got another vote. So to me, the organization like us, that we are not a technology company. So for me, it'll be good to rely on a technology company such as Microsoft, AWS, Amazon, or Google, etc., where they are investing heavily on to this the infrastructure which we can consume, right? That's pretty much what the cloud is all about. And to me, and those players also they are the adopters of the newer technology, AI, machine learning, etc., because they got a bigger team and they got a significant investment in this space. And then if you think about as I mentioned to you, the traditional legacy organization like Azure, I mean, one of my businesses has been in the business for 150 years. Now, if you think about that, there wasn't any technology 150 years ago. And we built the data center about 50 years ago. So there wasn't, it was just a malware back then, right? There wasn't any sophisticated type of attack. Now, if you look at a lot of those challenges, you'll see the flat network, etc. But what happened with the cloud, obviously, because they invest in the security, because every cloud provider's security is not a part of it, is actually at the front foot, right? It's a selling point for the cloud provider. So therefore, they actually heavily invested on the security, where I created the security, the network segmentation to your the bottom layer of the IPS, IDS, etc., etc. Now, the other thing is the visibility. For me, I see that we have the massive visibility with the cloud, and I actually get into a console, I can actually see the whole lot. Whereas if I shoot the data center, like how do I even unless I do different tools in my data center, even that I would question, do I still have the full visibility, such as your appliances with no host information, right? How do I even deploy an agent on then to discover these? I mean, there are tools, but I mean, there's a lot more work where as a cloud, you actually can see the whole lot. That's my view.
I'll dive in and say I don't think it's any better or any worse to use the cloud from a security perspective. It's just different. It's just a different, a different type of IT to secure. So if a business / organization sees benefit in using the cloud and makes the decision to use the cloud, well, then the security team needs to keep up. I don't believe that it's necessarily more secure by default. I think we've all seen, the problems with people exposing S3 buckets to the world accidentally. And additionally, we run regular scans of the entire internet, and we've found things such as, each cloud provider configures their base images for an operating system to their own standards. Now, some cloud providers will configure, say, Red Hat Linux or Debian. I don't mean to pick on anyone. I'm just naming a distribution with a running FTP server built into the base image. Now, FTP is a service you should never run on the internet without some sort of security wrapper. And yet, at least one of the cloud providers has that in their standard image. So it doesn't remove the need to be vigilant from a security perspective. It just changes the nature and some of the tools that you use in order to be secure.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. Just to add on, I think it can either be better or worse. It is different. It depends on how you implement it, design it, the information that you choose to put there, whether you want to go all in on your strategy, right? But to be honest, I think all those situations can get hacked, whether you're on-prem, whether you're in the cloud. I think if you think strategically, there's a lot of companies and organizations migrating to the cloud. I think in the future, probably they'll be moving back to on-prem, or where will the cloud sit, right? With super hyper converged infrastructure, you'll have like a cloud, in the size of a hard disk or a single server. It also depends on who you are, right? And which cloud service you're using, right? So say, for example, if you're the US government and you're using a cloud service provider in Russia, your constituents or citizens might not be happy if the cloud service manages to get hacked. You can make mistakes in configuration, but you can also make mistakes in configuration also on-prem as well. So, you look at all the breaches this year, Email IT got hacked, that was a cloud service. But then you look at, even DISA, so the Defense Information Systems Agency this year, also got hacked, right? And they only have one job, and their main job is to secure the communications for the US president, vice president, and those kind of people. So, yeah, I think it's just different, and either scenario has its pros and cons.
As for me, I would like to be a bit different. Of course, cloud and AI is very important. I would like to vote for the people. Back to basic, people, process, and technology. People is the enabler of everything. Based on the risk, based on the situation, and whatnot. So if you ask me, my investment would go for the right people, right skill set, and based on the situation. Of course, AI and also cloud would be a good journey for your technical, staff, in how to go about, because the security in the cloud is the responsibility of your staff, and the security of the cloud is the responsibility of the providers, for example, like AWS and Azure. So my vote goes to the people. Thank you.
Okay, Wayne, just for us to finish this session today.
My vote is exactly what everyone else was saying there. Basically, the people are really the people that have to process this, right? So make sure you're supporting your staff with the technology they need in order to deal with the new cyber attack vectors coming down the line. And I look forward to the future, because the more and more we start implementing technologies that we were afraid of because we didn't have enough knowledge about, well, that's the reality, right? How do we get rid of fear? Well, you get rid of fear by actually learning about the problem. So I think this is going to be a great future where we have to adapt. And the way we're going to be adapting is by amalgamating humans with the technology, rather than say, oh, the cloud's just a bad thing and AI is a bad thing. Well, use it first. Don't jump to a conclusion. Don't ever just make an assumption without validating it. That's the reality. Too many people are making assumptions without validating the reality.
Okay, no, I think that was a fantastic panel. I would like to thank everyone, Daminda, Andrew, Neil, Shawi, and also Wayne for the presentation. I think it was a huge contribution for the cyber aspect on AI and cloud. And also thank you the opportunity for the CISO magazine, or CISO mag, for us to be together today. From London, thank you very much for being with me and answering the questions at the time that we had.
Thank you.